Welcome back, everyone. This is your host, Rick Bosley. I'm excited today because I'm not going to be the smartest person on the call, nor am I the only person on the call. So I have a friend. We're going to talk about it today, and I'm going to bring him in. I'm just going to bring him in right now. Jimmy Ledbetter. From here forward, we're just going to call you AI Jimmy. That's the name we can find you on LinkedIn and on TikTok, and soon to be all the social media channels. Some quick backstory with Jimmy and I met Jimmy back in 2019 when he decided to move his family to Orlando. And he was introduced to me, and we found him a house. And then most recently traded that house in for a different house, still in Oviedo. And you've got a beautiful family, 2 kids, and your wife, and you can see all of your hardware swag. And so if you follow Jimmy online, you'll see him usually on like mile 9, sweating profusely in 103-degree Florida heat. But I imagine that's when you do your most clear thinking, right? And so that's when you have a thought about AI and you talk about it. So we're going to meet Jimmy. Jimmy has brought in some information with our team, and we'll learn about his background. But if we get a good response here and you like it, we'll be able to share this on a regular series of how we can incorporate artificial intelligence to be more practical for entrepreneurs, for business owners, for day-to-day life. It's the easy button, and I'm excited to learn as much as to share. So Jimmy, thanks for jumping on. Give us a quick background bio, CNN version of who are you, because you've got a pretty killer resume, and I'm honored that you're on the call with us here today.
Well, thanks, Rick. I appreciate it, buddy. So, hey, everybody. My name is Jimmy Ledbetter, also known as AI Jimmy. So I've been in the field of advanced analytics for over 20 years. I used to stand up what they call data warehouses and data science division. So how do they get data, put it in a singular place, and then let everybody get access to that data? I'm one of those weird nerds who fell in love with that. So I went and got my master's degree in that. I'm currently here working on a PhD in the same thing. That's actually how you and I met. Was I came here to go to school. It's just going to take till 2030 something for that to work. So as far as AI is concerned, like they'll talk about like AI has been around since the 60s, but I've been familiar with these, what we call generative AI, which is really how do we talk to the model? Like how do we actually converse with this thing? I've been familiar with it since about the 2020 range. I really got plugged in 2022 when the GPT 3.5. So that was a company by OpenAI. They came out and we were able to just chat with this thing. I thought, holy smokes, this is going to change everything. And I haven't talked about anything besides that since. I at the time I worked for a consulting firm where one of our biggest clients was Microsoft. And so I helped create some of the original Microsoft dashboards where we were able to start thinking about things conversationally instead of programming languages. So I helped create some of the initial dashboards. I'm not a technical person by trade, don't claim to be one, don't want to be one. So, but it was that non-technical, more business sense that actually led Microsoft and I to go through, and I got to sit at 33 of the Fortune 50s. I got to sit at all 4 of the big 4 and really talk about how do we use this thing called generative AI and how it's further past a parlor trick. So I also, passion points of mine, I've been able to, I work with a lot of what we call different verticals. So let
me push pause real quick. I have some questions.
Yeah. I have answers.
Well, you said AI has been around since the 60s. Enlighten me, because I don't recognize it from the 60s. Where have we seen it? Maybe right under our nose.
So when we see the word like AI, so you'll hear the terms like AI and ML, so machine learning. So basically, how do we have the machine act like a person would act like? So, so there were things like when people would do forecasting on, hey, I'm doing my budgetary forecasting. That could be considered artificial intelligence. So, so it's been around to how do we make the machine look like it's thinking. It really doesn't think, but it kind of looks like it does. So that's been around forever. But when we could actually talk to it, that's the new stuff. That's where
that's been a game changer. And I feel duped. If you remember the commercials, maybe the Super Bowl commercial with Samuel L. Jackson in the kitchen was the first interaction with Siri.
Yep.
And he had a generative conversation with Siri in the commercial. But we all know that Siri didn't do that. Siri was constantly lagging. So that commercial was by far edited. Now you can have that fluid of a conversation with generative AI or with ChatGPT as one of the main sourced ones there. And you said since 2022, that's been a thing, because I really recognize it in the past maybe 6 to 12 months of when it's becoming normalized, or at least for me.
Yeah, it's actually been around for a little bit further than that, but in 2022 is when the models really opened up, and that's where you could actually go to a commercial, like at the time it's ChatGPT, and we could actually have a conversation with it. And then in early 2023 was when it really started taking effect. I always tell the story, and it's going to get me in trouble at home for when I tell the story, but I knew AI was something big when my wife leans over to me and she goes, "Hey, do you know what ChatGPT is?" And I looked at her, I said, "You obviously have no idea what I do for a living." "Yeah, I'm very familiar of what ChatGPT is." I'm like, "How do you know what ChatGPT is?" And she goes, "Well, I saw my favorite reality family and they were talking about it." And I was like, holy smokes, wait a second. If you're taking my tech world and your social world and you're throwing it into a blender and we're solving problems on both sides, there's something to that, because my wife and I usually talk over each other. This time we were actually talking at the same frequency. I was like, this is fantastic. And that's where this has really become really relevant now, because it broke down those language barriers. She could, she's run social media for some small non-for-profits, but like we always talk over each other. Now we have that same language, which that was fantastic. So sorry, Jen, but it's a true story.
No, I love it. So you left the data world and jumped full into AI. Did you start your own company? Did you jump on board another company? Are you a contract worker? What does that look like?
No, great question. So I was a consultant at another company. I was their director of AI. So currently I sit at a company called Quisitive. So I am the VP of AI strategy and solutions. I'm still very much tied into the Microsoft sphere. So I run all of our generative AI initiatives. How do we go to customers? So that's one of the things that I love, is I get to actually sit down with customers and really, like you and I did, is like, what's your business problems? How does AI fit into them? And then how do we solve from there? So I run a team, and I'll tell you, Rick, AI is not a technical solution. It's just not. I hire my people who work directly for me, not technicians. They're all Deloitte level advisory, finance backgrounds, marketing backgrounds. That's the people who are doing really good with AI right now. So that's where my team sits.
As you're talking, because it can be intimidating for a lot of people, just like I remember, and I don't know why I remember this, but the mouse once upon a time was new. And when my grandmother, I'm in elementary school, and we gave her first computer with a mouse, you would have thought it was the most foreign object, because this was just so new to her. And now it's just a normal way, right? Even looking at kids now navigate through a tablet or an iPad. ChatGPT is just a new tool that's going to be normalized sooner than later. It's almost a carpenter with their tools. There's some pretty advanced tools out there. Until you understand how to use it, then you can build some really cool stuff really quickly, figuratively as a carpenter, and literally through the tools of generative AI. So our goal here through this conversation, Jimmy, is to give some real life examples. Sure. Like we said, you just sold and bought using our team, and it went well. And I think every time it goes well, you go, but it wasn't perfect, because nothing ever is. So then you look inward and go, where could we have improved it? And that's when you raise your hand up going, I think we could create some AI automation workflows, process flows, systems, and incorporate it just to make it that much further. Of course, I was all ears. And now we want to share this with our audience. So as you're listening to this, my brother actually is working for Amazon. Another one works for Lenovo, and AI is working in all of those worlds, right? And then we've got realtors on there. We've got buyers and sellers who might work in marketing or at a doctor's office or somewhere. So as you listen to this, we're going to give some real life examples of the real estate industry, because you experienced it. But depending who you are and where you are, I want you to listen to this and go, how can this be applied to me in my life, in my world? So, and the goal, Jimmy, I think, is that this will build. And as we have more case studies, we go, hey, check this out. I use this. And if we can get together, a couple times a month and do an episode, whether it's 30 minutes or 10 minutes, it's just sharing it and telling the story and helping people understand how to use this tool properly so we can make it more efficient.
I think it's wonderful, because honestly, like there's such a misnomer behind AI. And so my wife hates going to Epcot with me, because I'll listen and I'll hear somebody talking about AI and I'm like, I got to go talk to them because they're doing it wrong. But honestly, it's one of those things that you just have to play with it in order to figure out what's good and bad. And that's actually what I do with my clients all the time, is I go around and I tell stories because it's something I played with. I actually shared one with you the other day. I was in the ER, and it was just because back to me running just like a madman, I got overheated, and it was one of those things. I had a little pain in my chest a couple of days later. Well, you go to anybody who's listening out here, if you're in the medical field, if they say anything about chest, you get to go straight to ER and pay all that stuff. But what I did, being the AI geek I was, is I had my app on my phone. Every time I got a notification in that said, "Hey, your test result is here," I actually just piped it in there and say, "Hey, I'm working on a PhD, not an MD. Explain this to me. Am I okay? Am I going to die? What's happening?" And so it was really making the doctor mad, because every time he came back in, I'm like, "Oh, I got a new test and this is what's wrong with it." He's like, "Stop it." But this is the stuff that really, I just learned it because I played with it, and I learned that I was sitting in the ER, I was bored. So
2 misconceptions we've heard, and then we'll get into some real case studies. Number one, we are living the real life Terminator series. Do we have to be worried that the machines will take over the world?
No, there's the whole theory behind, is everything going to be taken over? Are our computers going to become smarter than we are? Remember, the way I describe AI is it is the world's most elaborate parrot. It can remember things that you said and then spit it back. But when it comes to being creative, that's not what it is. It's taking all of that knowledge it knows and puts it together. So it coming up with ways of being malicious are very low probability. But also remember, like, there's a lot built into these models. So we'll use the term large language model a lot. That's the engine behind it. There's a lot in there that protects people. So like, if you were to jump into something and say, "Tell me how to build a bomb," it's going to say, "I can't do that for you," because that is something that could hurt people. "Hey, I want to come up with a plan to go steal something." I can't do that. It can't talk about self-harm. It can't talk about sex. So it can't do any of the nasty stuff, because that's what all of these companies are getting together and say, we can't let it have that conversation. Now, can somebody using AI cause something malicious? Absolutely. But they can do that with Excel, so
Sure.
enter tax fraud. So.
Second question, will this take over jobs and put typical workforce or virtual assistants or executive assistants or paralegals or radar technicians, will it take them and put them out of business?
That's such a good question, Rick. And I get asked that everywhere. I actually was presenting here at the state of Florida, and we were talking about this thing. AI is not going to take away your job. Somebody using AI is going to. So that's just the short and fat of it. So here's a really good real world example. I was working with a law firm, and one of their biggest expenses was paralegals. Is like, and the paralegals doing the emails, not talking to the customer. So there was bill rate A if I was doing emails, and then bill rate B, which was higher if I'm actually physically talking to the customer. Well, what they did was, you obviously want them talking to the customers because I can get the higher bill rate. And honestly, it's a better interaction. You probably hate email as much as I do, so I'm not going to read the whole thing.
Hate them.
So how did we use AI to generate that response back to the customer, meeting that customer where they're at, speaking the same lingo, sending it out to the customer, and then the customer's like, "Actually, I want to spend time talking to that person." That one use case alone, we saw upticks of about 20% of them actually wanting to talk to the customer, because they felt like they were given the information that they needed. And now I'm able to have that next conversation. And for the law firm, it was actually more profitable, but it was also, I came in and I knew the questions I needed to ask. Remember, when it comes to this, and I get asked this all over the world, let it automate your day-to-day work. But remember, you have this thing called a backlog. What's that cool stuff that you, Rick Bosley, want to do? That's the stuff your brain power is needed for, not how do I keep the lights on at night. And that's what everybody needs to start thinking about, is we now have the ability to become more creative, whereas before we were keeping the lights on.
2 things come to mind. One, I went to our annual convention in Las Vegas last year, and there was an AI breakout session, which I would love to get you in on it, and I'll try to open those right doors for you. And I'm talking to a lady who had never really introduced or seen anything of it. And this was all new to her, but it was shiny. But she had a virtual assistant over somewhere, Philippines or Vietnam or somewhere, not sure where it was. And she said, all of a sudden, my virtual assistant became so much more efficient. And I'd give her data and a spreadsheet, and she'd send it back to me in 10 minutes. I'm like, holy cow, how are you doing this? And I told her, I was like, she's just learned how to use a prompt of AI. I was like, she could have duped you and just taken it and said, I'll get this back to you in 4 hours, because that's what you would expect it to do. But she puts the queue and gives it back to you in 10 minutes. And I think that's the tool, is this virtual assistant could have said, no, I'm not using it. It's going to take over my job, and spent 4 hours inputting data. and said it, put it in the prompt and said, what's next, coach? What's next, boss? Let's go, lean in, wildly valuable and efficient. And that goes to, I think, the human needs to put in the prompts. And we're going to talk about that a little bit because you taught me even last time the importance of a prompt. The better the prompt, the better the question, and then go deeper and deeper and deeper and finalize and edit and finalize and edit. And now you have your final product, and your bandwidth was spent on the origin of thought and the questions, not on the formatting and the grammar and the audience to speak in layman's terms or to certain things out there. So let's jump in. We're about 15 minutes in the recording right now. Let's do some real world scenarios because you have some examples that you wanted to share and see if people can pull out some wisdom from them.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do, so I always want to frame it up with the business problem first. So because as technologists, we tend to have a technology, want to chase a problem. Well, I had a true problem. So I've had the immense opportunity to work with you and your team before, and we've always had fairly smooth transactions. Now, no real estate transaction is entirely smooth, and here's where our wrinkle was. We had 2 different mortgages. Now, this is not your bailiwick. This was my mortgage agent, and he was good. Now, we're not going to talk about names here because we're all friends. We can all learn from it. But I was buying it was a new home, but it was still with the builder, so they wanted me to go to in-home financing. Now, you guys had a loan agent and I think the world of the gent. So I was stuck in a conundrum. Now, for the listeners here, I'm just going to be honest. My loyalty lies in my checkbook right now. So it was who's going to get me the best bottom line dollar that I could. So both of them worked up documents, and I'm going to show you that here in a second. And we're actually going to use my mortgage because I think that's more powerful. So now what's happening is I got on the phone with 2 different people. And I started getting 2 different stories. Now, I'm a data guy. So when something doesn't add up, it's just an earwig for me. It's like, okay, somebody's not telling me something. So now I don't understand mortgages. I don't understand the lingo. I don't understand the terms, nothing about it. So that's where AI really kicked in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop. So let me go ahead and share my screen.
Yep. And once it's up, I'll better pull it up there. Well, and if you're not listening to this, usually the builder, because everything's in-house, my loan officers can't touch them. But my loan officer knew that. He's like, okay. And he had a new program, new platforms. He's going, I'm going to give you everything I got to try to beat this. And I think it really threw the builder for a loop because that doesn't happen very often. And they got a little bit territorial.
They did. And rightfully so. I mean, we're talking about, we're talking about your livelihood here. Whoever I pick gets the cash. The other person gets a big goose egg. So, I mean, I completely get this. And especially if you think about, like for anybody here who is listening, you're shopping mortgages, so how can AI help? So really what I wanted to do first, and this is a very simple one. And now I'm using a tool called Claude. Now we've talked about OpenAI. We've talked about, that ChatGPT. This is just another company called Anthropic that uses, I think for analysis, it does a really good job with me being a technical person. So what I've done is I've uploaded 2 documents in here. I just clicked this little plus sign here, and I don't want to go too far into this, Rick, because there's going to be the names here, and I just don't want to show the names. I think that's tacky. Yeah. But I went ahead and I put in the 2 documents, and I said, here was the first prompt I started off with. I said, compare the 2 mortgages. Do not use names. Now, guess what? It messed up. So as you're using AI, and you brought the example of the assistant up a second ago, it's important to know that there has to be a human in the loop. So I actually have a prompt above this now that has the name in there where I said, you said the name, please do not mention the name. So whenever you're using AI, there has to be a human in the loop because the names were on there and I want to remove the names to protect the innocent. And so it went through and it got to me where it's like, okay, here is your monthly lender A, lender B, monthly payment comparison. So it gave me what my year 1 through 11 breakdown, what my year 12 through 30 breakdown is, what my mortgage insurance is, what my escrow is. It did this and it said, okay, here is your, the money saving with going to lender B. So, and it showed its work. I thought that was great. Now, the big thing we also got to think about is closing costs, so like how much is it that's actually coming out of my pocket because my wife wants a pool. So I got to save every dime I got to go put a pool in here. So, okay. So it says, okay, here's everything. I see some credits. Now we need to do like our cash to close comparison. So it's got lender A, lender B. Now, Rick, this is a lot of information, a lot of it. And let's just face it, I'm still probably not the best person to grok this. So what I put in here was create a table comparing the two mortgages. You can actually tell AI, how can I communicate with you? So it actually put this up in a nice, neat table. And notice it actually put the differences in here for me. So I didn't even ask it to do it, but it's got all of this data in here. So it's like, if Jimmy's doing column A and column B, he probably wants to go ahead and do the difference. Now, if I didn't like it, I would just say remove that column, but I like it being helpful.
Yep.
So now I go through here. Now this is the important part, because as we start looking here, there's an error in here, and I wanted you all to see it in real time, because we do have
to. Can you zoom that in a little bit? So if you are watching, you can see it if you're on your phone. If you're listening, we'll do our best to kind of share with you what we're doing right now. But he's scrolling through and he's using Claude, and you said Claude's your baby. ChatGPT is right there. I think it's Pepsi, Coke, Nike, Reebok. It's a personal preference. Both are wildly effective.
Yep. When I'm writing my marketing slicks, I'm going to go to OpenAI. When I'm doing data comparison, I go to Claude. There's so many out there, and we can always come back and talk about different models. But these are the OpenAI and Claude are the two that I use.
Okay.
So for everybody who's watching, it says like loan amount. Hey, it's the same. My interest rate is the same. My monthly P&I is the same. Okay. That's good. And so you always want to start with AI with something light, because you want to validate it. I always call it check your work. Like as a kid, I always hated in elementary school where I had to do long division, and they're like, show your work. And I'm like, I did it in my head. AI, I don't trust it to do it in its head. So it's like, okay, here's side by side what the comparison looks like. Now, my monthly insurance, you can see here, there was a dip for everybody at home. It's $188 versus $128. My estimated escrow was $1,000 versus $808. It keeps telling me where I saved money at.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the issue came with when I got my document. So when I got my document, I had made a deposit with the lender, but my mortgage broker didn't know that it was there. So there's a $13,000 delta here. So what happens in different solutions is you might have to go back to Excel and you might have to put it in there. What I can do is I can just have a conversation, because right here, and what I'm highlighting, folks, is I say deposit, and it says that there's negative $13,000 and zero. Well, I need to change that. So what I'm going to do is in natural language, I'm going to say in the deposit row. And now it cannot fix my typing. So that's the one thing I wish it could.
We can't see your typing here. So you're good. You're typing so fast. It sounds like you're amazing.
Fantastic. I didn't make one mistake here. So there is a $13,000 credit.
Now we see it. Our faces are gone. Go ahead.
In both columns. So now what I've done is it's going to go through and it's going to read that out. And so it's now my assistant is sitting there going, oh, I found, I need to go through. I need to relook at that. Now, again, if you look at this here, it says it fixed it. It didn't fix it. So what happens? So sometimes you might have to really think about how you need to talk to this thing. So change the deposit in lender B from negative 13,000, or from 0 to negative 13,000. So now we'll test it again. Now again, we're dealing with the demo gods. Okay, the demo gods have finally smiled on me, and so now it shows me a deposit here of $13,000, and it didn't change here. It says now it's the same thing. So you'll notice that it's somebody that I can actually talk to and say, okay, I need you to change that and go in here and help me find the differences. So, my APR shows a little bit different, my total interest percentage. Now, Rick, here's an interesting thing also. I didn't read anything about this. I just had it read the document. So it actually added, like, is there a prepayment penalty? That was something it actually read the text and said, hey, I think that's important. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and put that in there. So it says, no, here's the same. The rate lock, and now it broke it down into advantages. So it says, okay, so lender B has $11,618 in lower costs. They're $252 monthly lower payment. They're $5,349 less, lower monthly insurances, and they have $14,000 in credits. Now, lender A had $9,000 less cash needed, so opposed to the $11,000. There was a rate lock, slightly lower APR, but they had a higher credit. So now here's where AI is interesting. It offers a recommendation. Now, Rick, that's really important. We don't want it making the decision for us, but we want it to make a recommendation. So it says, hey, Jimmy, based on this and everything I did above, I would recommend B. So that's the cool side-by-side. Now let's end the story. So now what I was able to do was I was able to take this research and go back to both of my brokers and say, okay, y'all, obviously not a mortgage guy, definitely a data guy. What's the difference? You know, like, so we're side by side here. So now I need you to fight with the table as opposed to fight with the layman. And so basically I got both sides to agree that, well, Jimmy, fine, go with the other person. So that made me feel better because I was better prepared to have that discussion because I was able to have this tool.
This is interesting because there's in the model that we live in, or the day and age we live in, we have to go, can I trust you? Can I trust your integrity, or can I trust your knowledge, or can I trust your intent? And you trusted them both until their stories weren't in alignment. And then you're going, well, and it's not necessarily because one of them wanted to deceive you. Maybe they just didn't understand it.
Correct.
Sometimes, and there is a world that there is deception happening, right? In certain industries with different things. So this is a way to check your work and to go, now fight with numbers. I love math, right? You and I, we could data geek out probably, but math has no emotion. It's just, it doesn't matter who I like better. It doesn't matter who Rick introduced me to. It doesn't matter who's building my house. It just matters of going, one is better for my pocketbook and one's not. And that's where loyalty stood, because go fight for it and let's go after it. And you said that, of going, yeah, let's shop. Let's have some fun. And that's capitalism. That's the world we're in right now.
There's also something there real quick. It's like one of my favorite Star Wars quotes is, well, it was true from a certain point of view. And we can absolutely see something through a skew, or we could have a bias where one person was held up on, I'm giving you this type of credit. So in their perception, from their point of view, well, Jimmy, I'm handing you this amount of money. I don't understand where you're not grokking this. The other person is like, well, here's your long-term benefit, and I've got X, Y, and Z. So that was like, so I love what you said. And I actually had a sales leader who said it. It makes this a non-emotional decision. Mm-hmm. It's just, now here's the data. And I gave them the opportunity. You want to win me as a customer? There's the number you got to beat. So,
you know where I want everyone to use this? Buying a car. I do. I want them to use it as I'm going through this, and I've heard so many people, because the dealerships and whoever's listening to this in dealership, I'm not an expert in that, yet they often make their money through financing. The sales are the sales, MSRP above and below. The money's made in financing. So they'll give you incentive if you finance with them, and that's where they give it. Essentially, you get $7,000 off if you do financing. Well, all they're doing is giving you their interest. You give them 6 months interest free, and then you start paying interest, but you're locked in, right? And so many people are going, they shop with a monthly rate. I want my truck to be under $500 a month. And then they end up with a 96-month ridiculous term, and then they're upside down, can't sell this truck, gets repossessed, and all of a sudden they're in financial crisis, and Dave Ramsey comes knocking on the door, right? So go ahead.
So it's interesting. So when I bought a car, so there's the 4 box thing, it's like, I'm going to put like my price up here, my trade in. And I didn't learn this until after I bought a car, because I used AI to buy my car also. It was like, hey, you want everybody to adjust above the box. You either want to lower the price of the car, or you want to increase the amount of my trade in. Well, that the dealership doesn't want to do that. That's money out of their pocket. They want to increase your term, or work with your payment. So I actually, there's a lot of people who hate me for AI. They brought me the little box thingy, and I snapped a picture of it. I said, here's where I want to be. Here's what I want to pay long-term. But I was conversing with it in a way, because I don't understand the auto industry. I was like, hey, bottom line dollar, here's what I want to pay. And it goes, oh, it actually said this, and it was interesting. It goes, oh, they're using the box trick on you, and here's what you need to do, and here's what you need to counter back. So I actually showed them my phone with my app. I was like, can you do this? And the gent was livid. I mean, livid. I was like, I had my own personal buyer right in my pocket. And I was like, if you can't hit that, I'm going to go down the road. And they're like, nobody's going to hit it. I took it down the road. I got my car.
They hit it. Well, so we're using this as our tool, and got an expert, and I want to spend a few more minutes on prompts. And I know we didn't get nearly as much as we wanted to, but prompts matter. And you taught me something, and maybe I took it just from the iceberg, or maybe I'm going into it. But essentially, it's the who, what, when, where, why, just so we can learn to grade school in grammar class. Yet it's who are you? And so you're telling OpenAI or generative text to say, this is the hat I'm wearing. And then you say, and who am I? Talk to me like I'm a layman. Talk to me like I'm a PhD. Talk to me like I'm a real estate professional. And I think we said, talk to me like I'm a high school educated person, because that's the norm. So if we're talking to the mass public, and that might be a little bit generous. In fact, my a marketing person from a hospital who I connected with, they made their messages to a third grade reading level.
Yeah.
Because that was a lot of it. So we have to make sure it's there. But I did that this morning, and we love, and I'll just do a personal story here. We love the early 2000 Ford Excursions. Just the big buses, the big diesels thing. And you can go buy like the 7.3 diesel, the 6.0 diesel, the 5.0, all sorts of things. So I used that prompt and I said, you are a diesel mechanic expert on Ford Motors. I am a busy dad who sells real estate that's intrigued with the notion of trading in the 2023 Subaru for this. What matters to me is reliability, longevity, low maintenance, high resale. And the space is convenient, knowing that it went for me. And it pro and con and do this. And then I found one of those ads on Facebook Marketplace and I screenshotted it and I said, what do you think of this? And it analyzed everything and it said, ask them that question. Make sure you do this. Here's a good, holy smokes. The research that would have taken me 2 days using Consumer Reports or Kelley Blue Book or anything else, I did it while I was brushing my teeth this morning in about 4 minutes. I almost felt like cheating. But this is how we're learning to use it in our everyday life. And that came from the prompt that you taught me. So talk to us real quick about what are some rules if we're going to start dabbling and using AI more effectively, whether it's casually searching Marketplace, reading your medical reports as you're waiting in the hospital, or building a business marketing plan. Talk to us about some rules of prompts of how AI will be more effective.
No, and that's such a great question. This is what again, I share this all around the world. So the first thing you have to do, and I tell everybody, and because this is a little bit hard, and you said it a second ago, how do I learn? How do I ingest data? I'm ADD and dyslexic. I am literally card carrying in both of those. So my learning style, my reading style is very specific to me. It has to be in bullet points. It has to be short and concise. So you have to take an introspective as to how do I ingest data? Because guess what? This AI can speak to me however I want to. If you're that PhD person, they might want pages upon pages of context. The person who is, they might be something that's more flow oriented. I've seen it create emojis for people and like do things with mostly emojis. So understanding how you ingest data is very important because, one of the things that's hard is when you go into a company is learning the company vernacular. So I have a prompt that's just set up for, this is how I learn. Then you go to the next part. Who is that person that I want to talk to? You said, is there a diesel mechanic? So for me, in my full prompt, when I built this out, you are a mortgage specialist who is familiar with mortgages in Oviedo, Florida, specifically in Seminole County. I need you to have 20 years worth of experience. I need you to understand how I'm buying a new house versus buying a pre-owned house. This is the type of house I'm wanting to buy. I am going to give you a couple of documents. I need you to analyze both of those and then bring me to a conclusion. Because what that did, Rick, is this model knows everything from mortgages to how to make Thin Mint cookies to how to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So by me being very specific, it gets all the rest of that junk out of the way and said, this is how I have to talk. And I don't want to create what we call a hallucination. So hallucination is a very important word there. And Rick will tell you all my jokes are bad, but this is the best way I can describe it. I was watching Captain Underpants with my kids, and one of these kids said to the other, he goes, was what you just said true? He goes, I don't know. I just said it with great authority and everybody believed me. That's a hallucination. If we don't shove all of that information out of the way, it could get creative and make something up. So when I said mortgage, Oviedo, Seminole County, data, it shoves everything else out of the way. And now I'm creating that perfect person. And then after I've done that, so here's how I learn. Here's how you learn. Here's how I need to talk. What's the problem? What type of information do I need? Do I need up-to-date information between the two? Like, I wouldn't want to ask a large language model about the rates today. They don't have today's information. And in a future podcast, we'll talk about how to get more recent data. But it's, what was the problem I needed to solve? If you can do those three things, you can absolutely prompt any way you want to. Now, folks, here's your freebie. You can also ask the model to say, create a prompt for me, and here's what I need you to do. And nothing speaks to a model better than a model. So, hey, here's what I want to do. Make it for me, and then you should be saving these out, and then rinse, cycle, and repeat.
We call that a model, right? Even in languages, Susan Scott Fierce Conversation gives you a model of how to have a conversation. This is a model for a prompt. If I paraphrase what you said, it's identify the expert that you need in that moment. Is it a Girl Scout cookie maker? Is it a diesel mechanic? Is it a mortgage loan officer? Give them your problem. Here's what I'm facing. And then share with them what your ideal solution is and which format you'd want that. Which would be, give me a pro and con, give me a side by side, give me a table, give me a recommendation, give me your top 3 recommendations, give me advice there, give me more, elaborate on number 2, remove 3 and 4, and you just keep going. And if we can treat it truly, and you've referenced it, I don't know if it's subconsciously my assistant. I told my assistant, like, this is a little pocket assistant now. It truly is, and communicate that way. You even said in our example, you use manners, please and thank you, and you kind of laughed at yourself. But there is a reason behind that as well, because you're teaching it how to communicate with you, and thus the emails that it writes and the text that it sends to you, you're teaching it how to effectively communicate. Did I paraphrase that correctly?
You absolutely did. Because imagine when you go in and you're sitting with wait staff. So if anybody waited a table once upon a time, you have the hardest job on the face of the planet. One of the things, the way you interact with that waiter or waitress is, hey, could I please get this? Could I please get that? They are going to be there. What are they going to say? Thank you, please, I appreciate it. They're going to return the way that you communicated back. If you do the shaky glass thing and say, hey, I need this, it's going to be a lot more curt. Yeah, the snappy, hey, get here now type thing. Like what it does is, again, back to the parrot, it matches your tone. So it's like, okay, if you said please and thank you, you probably want something a little bit more flowery. If you want the snappy, cool, just give it just the facts. That is absolutely fine.
Yeah. You just said something, and again, I could go down this rabbit hole. Let's finish with one of the coolest fun things that are just kind of what you want to brag about, because I have a thought as you just said it with the wait staff. Here's a thought. And you've recently been on a health journey with running and exercise and eating, and I imagine, yes, and I get on and off that wagon. And when I'm on the wagon, a couple of years ago, I did keto, or I've done macros, and you have things like MyFitnessPal, and then you got to measure everything. You got to. I imagine if I could go to a restaurant, I could take a picture of that menu and say, you are a health, fitness, ketosis expert, and this is a menu of this restaurant. Take a look at it and give me 3 options. I like this genre. I don't like this genre. Create a food for me that would keep me under 10 grams of carbohydrates with at least 75 grams of protein. And it would read the menu in seconds and give me options. And I wouldn't have to think with MyFitnessPal. I don't have to do all that. And I can just take a picture of the menu and it'll go, here's what you go, blah, 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 blah. Am I accurate with that?
Oh, you're absolutely accurate. Oh, I've done it several times. And so not only have I done the menu itself, but then when they turn the food over to me, like, hey, like, is this, like salads are the most healthy thing on the face of the planet, right? Until you put the dressing on it, and then it just disappears. So, hey, I actually did this example with the dressing where I took the salad by itself. I said, what does this have approximately for calories? And it's directionally accurate. It's like, oh, this thing's probably got like 140 calories. And I'm like, great, smother it in Thousand Island dressing because it's delicious. And I said, oh, now that went to 850. But I'm eating salad. I mean, what's happening here? So yeah, it's that, like, and that image piece is so important because it can actually look at things and say, like, I real quick on the health kick one, snap at a picture. Hey, I want to run 13 miles today. Here's the map. Which way should I go? Oh, Jimmy, you need to go boom, 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 boom. And
so just take a Google shot, Google Maps, take a screenshot, upload it. My other neat story that shocked me, I'm in the airport and I got some time to kill. So I go to the bookstore and I see a wall of books. And then when I read stuff like this. I read Simple Path to Wealth, and I read Profit First, and great CEOs are like, I read business books. And I was like, you know what? Let me get an entertaining book. I haven't read entertainment book forever. So I snap this picture, and I say, I like made for TV shows like Bosch and Reacher and Lincoln Lawyer that I know came from books. I said, here's a picture of these, and it was, I don't know, 6 rows and 400 books. And it within seconds said, here's your genre, here's your author, try this. I was like, where's that book? 4th row, about eye level, right over here, next to that big. And I was like, there it is. And sure enough, it pulled. And then I went deeper, and I was like, tell me more about why would I like this? And I said, well, it relates to this character. But I was like, holy smokes, I would have just, it almost reminds me of when we used to be at Blockbuster. For the people listening to this who are over the age of 40, and you'd spend an hour and a half reading the back of movie titles. And that's time that was fun for being a 90s child, an 80s child, but now we don't have to do that. So what was your really cool story of how you used it for everyday general use? So it was just fun efficiency for you.
So for me, like I've got a calendar that is just I'm nothing but a professional bottleneck at my work. That's what I do. So for me, my efficiency and fun was, like I actually would take an actual just picture of my calendar and say, like, here's what today looks like. What do I need to prep for? How do I need to prep for it? What needs to happen? And it would be like, oh, here you go. Here is what your day looks like. You are 2 back-to-back here. You're probably not going to do this right. Because you're going to be context switching a little bit too much. And oh, by the way, here's one. And I reported to my EVP. It's like, do you have time to prep for this? And so I was like, oh crud. So then I was able to start. So that was from an efficiency standpoint. Is I do that every day. Is like, what does my day look like? And then hey, based on the, and you can go to different tools like Copilot or something like that. Hey, I'll take a couple of emails, I'll copy and paste it, and I'll be like, hey, based on these last 3 emails for this meeting, what's my document that I need to go into? So that way I'm very prepared for this meeting. But by the way, do it in the voice of Robin Williams, because I just want to giggle out of it. And so it'll actually like set it up for me. And it's like, I have it like in Williams or Carlin or something like that, where I get a giggle out of it, but it hits me where I'm at. It was like, oh, you've got this day. And by the way, my virtual comedian is here to tell me how I'm going to handle today. So,
and if we put ourselves in the cast of Mad Men, outside of giving you a cup of coffee in the newspaper or a glass of scotch, you'd walk into your office, you'd say on the pager, what's my day look like today? What should I prepare for? How can I do this? And it comes in and says, well, based on this, I think it'd be overly efficient, but I went ahead and confirmed these appointments for you, and I moved this one over to the 12th because your day was too much, and I knew you'd need that. And by the way, it's my birthday. I went and should bought myself a birthday. So we're going to get into this another, because one of the things I got from the convention was a tool called Zapier.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, Zapier very well.
I believe Zapier, if I described it, how I describe it to people is it's a connector between different AI or different tools. So Zapier, if I have it with OpenAI or Chat or Claude, I can have Zapier then go to my email or go to my calendar. So not only does it see my calendar, but it will send emails to confirm, don't forget, Jim, you got Rick today at 4:00. Here's the automated, here's a link. And it does it for me because I gave it permission to do so. And now things are being automated through Zapier as that bridge connector, almost like an API, right?
It is. And what's interesting is now that functionality is even native inside of some of the tools. So like when you look at like OpenAI is typically more Microsoft centric and Claude is more Google centric. Claude actually has a connector that connects into your Google Drive, your calendar, and it's got everything right there. So you can actually connect without even having that middle person, where you can just say, hey, what does today look like? So and then have that set up. Now there are some rules behind it. We can always talk about that later. But depending on what tool stack, these integration points are coming in hot and heavy, because the chat's interesting, but until it does something, until it actually schedules that meeting for me, or finds that listing for me, or peruses some internet sites for me to make sure that I'm going in prepared, API is roughly the equivalent of the thumb trick from this. Like, oh, it's kind of cute, but until it actually does something, that's when I've seen corporations move these at scale.
My kids still love the thumb trick, man. Don't judge me there. Okay, so if I heard you correctly, next episode I want to learn about Claude and integration with email, with Google Calendars, with Google Forms, Google Slide Deck, because we use G Suite. And so if you're telling me Claude is already G Suite friendly, man, I want to spend some time there. I heard you say, how do we identify prospective prospects, clients, customers, create process flow, automation with this is what's we always say in training, tell them what you've done, tell them what you're doing, tell them what we're going to do. And now we can have the system prompt that and say, Rick, here's what's going on. Would you like me to send this to Jimmy now? And I can review it and say, yep, everything seems check. Go ahead and send that out. But the draft was created for me.
And I'd even take it one step further. Let's go ahead and get a list of your clients and say, do you know what segments of clients you have? Do you market to 3, 4, 5? Let the machine figure out what your marketing strategy is for however many different types of customers you have, and then build out marketing plans for each one of them. That's actually a trick I do a lot. So as long as I can get access to the data, like Archimedes said, give me a big enough lever and I can move the world. So.
And everyone gives us access to the data because they have to have their fresh profile pick. And they tell you what they're at, when they're doing, with whom, their anniversaries, their birthdays, their alumni, their favorite food, their favorite restaurant, their work, when they started their new job, when their anniversary. The data is out there. We used to take a FBI intelligence weeks to do. A 12-year-old can do it in about 30 minutes, and now AI can do it in about 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Those customer profiles are so powerful, but people are scared to play with this. And like I said, y'all, you can't break it. I've tried, and I've tried really, really hard. Now, is it going to say something wonky every time? Absolutely. We just saw it with the $13,000. How do we fix it? You saw it mess up, but that's okay. That's 60 seconds right there saved me about $7,000. So that was huge.
It's a learning curve. All right, brother. Is there anything that I missed that you're going? Don't forget, I got to say this. Close us out with a mic drop.
I think we knocked everything out of the ballpark. Again, y'all, if everybody thinks that AI is so far ahead of me, remember the everything started new in 2022, 2023. And honestly, most of my people are still having problems doing it at scale. It's okay. Get in, play with it. You can't break it. We do need to talk about security. Make sure you're checking your security settings on there. So like if you're using OpenAI, there's something called help improve the model for everybody in your settings in the top right-hand corner. Turn that off. Otherwise your data could slip out. Make sure you're reading all about that because we want to protect our data. But other than that, get in, play, and have fun with it.
Figured out how to normalize it. Make it normal. I named my voice interactive Betty because I was tired of saying hello ChatGPT. It just felt too robotic. So I said, I'm going to name you Betty. So now my kids go, hey, ask Betty. And Siri's like, so yesterday. Now it's ask Betty and she'll tell you what's going on.
So 5 minutes ago. So
5 minutes ago. All right, Jimmy, I appreciate it. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this content, then make sure you're going to notify. Hit the bell, whatever you've got to do to listen or watch this again, and I will have Jimmy back again because selfishly, there's so much more that I can learn from him, and hopefully in doing so through listening to our conversations, you can learn too. Having fun reading books in the library or the airport, making sure you stay on diet in the restaurants, reading your information in the hospital, making the right financial choices through which loan officer, which product, which car payment, which 4 boxes, and then ultimately how we can grow our business and just be more efficient, to spend more time with people who we love and doing the things that we love to do, and less time analyzing and working when OpenAI can do it for us. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great day. We'll talk soon. Take care.